Hey, Venezuela, this is a stick-up. It is time for all of us to say what we see right before us. An empire attacks a poor, weaker state and demands the lion's share of its richest raw material, oil. Why is this not a stick-up? They demand it and get it. Remember that old corny line from the movies, your money or your life? Here it's, give me your oil or else. Or, even worse perhaps, this oil is ours. We're taking most of it. Really? Honestly? Doesn't that sound straight up like a stick-up? And as if that wasn't enough, the seizure of Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro and his wife Celia Flores was and is a kidnapping. Think of this, okay? When have you heard of U.S. presidents waging unjust wars on false and specious pretexts? We need think no further than the hellish wars in Iraq or Afghanistan, where tens of thousands of people died under grotesque U.S. bombing campaigns. Remember weapons of mass destruction? Now, who got busted for that disaster? Maduro and his wife are not subject to American law. They should be returned home, period, immediately. And the natural resources of Venezuela should remain in the hands of the people of Venezuela, not the Americans. With love, not fear. This is Mumia Abu Jamal.
The cows on early for a Monday morning. I'm no fan of the early morning broadcasts, but we are here hopefully to be constructive. And just for context, our 17-year anniversary of broadcasting, we celebrate. We were on just, about 14 hours ago? We were on the air. Our guest joined us live from Australia. Global System of White Supremacy. In fact, you can tag. We're checking our cow's passport for the month of February. We got Norway, Australia, Canada. More stamps coming just for the month of February. More stamps coming. Global System of White Supremacy. I've been so eager, looking forward to our broadcast for today. That was Mumia Abu Jamal, who's been in greater confinement for nearly a half century. And he is more up to date than most of the people that I bump into who have iPhones and access to 24-hour Wi-Fi, TV, you name it. But he was talking about the U.S. invasion into Venezuela, as he called it, the kidnapping of President Nicolas Maduro, the illegality of all of this, the oil theft of all of that, widely discussed for some time. I've been looking and I've said, wow, looking at these people, I'm not sure. Do you think these people would be accepted as white? I've even said, do you think, that might be a part of why this is happening? If the people in Venezuela are widely regarded as non-white, I've said consistently, do you think we would be doing this sort of thing if these people were white? If Nicolas Maduro, if he was a white person, would this be happening? Ask those sort of questions consistently, and I said, man, we need to learn a lot more about the area of the world known as Venezuela. How does racism operate in this part of the world? I look to try to get more information, more details on all of this, a more recent report. Fascinating, lots of information. It is titled Extrajudicial Killings in Venezuela, Confronting the Legacy of Racism and Poverty through Transitional Justice. Lots of details. I was stunned just having never traveled to South America. I'm totally ignorant, so I wanted the opportunity to try to learn as much as possible. Is racism a problem in this part of the world? What this report seems to suggest? Absolutely. What is the nature of this problem? And then how does this all relate to the U.S. invasion and oil theft that's happening in this part of the world? The author of the report I just named for you, which was just published recently, you should check it out, get your hands on it, especially if you're interested in what's happening with this coup, one may call it. The author, she's an assistant professor of law at the Universidad Complutense de Madrid in Spain. We are super excited to discuss this report, maybe get a little bit more understanding of how racism operates in Venezuela. Joining us, I was so confused, even I confess. So the report is about Venezuela, but I thought our guest, she's writing about Venezuela, I thought she was in Venezuela. Wrong. In Spain, whopping difference in time zones and a whole lot else, but the Spanish is the same. Our guest joining us live from Spain, Dr. Thairi Moya Sánchez. Dr. Sánchez, are you with us?
Yes, I'm here. Thank you very much for your invitation, Gus. I'm happy
Thank
to be with you today.
We are elated to have you with us, Dr. Thairi. For our listeners, I'm sure that for lots of folks, this is their first time hearing from you. Any information that you would like to share with us about who you are and the work you do out in Spain?
Yes, of course. Well, I'm really happy to be with you and have the opportunity to discuss this issue that is very controversial. And I do know that the situation in Venezuela is unknown, what is happening there. And I want to share some lights about the entire situation, the races, the political situation, the international crime that had been committed during the last 10 years under the Maduro regime, the invasion of the United States. We can discuss of under the umbrella of international law, human rights law, and international public law professor at the Complutense University of Madrid, but also I work with human rights. Previously to be in Madrid, I was working very close with victims of the situation in Venezuela. I do know, and also I have worked with victims from other countries, but due to the circumstances in my home country, I've been focused because I want to try to explain what is happening there, no? Because it is a mix of problems that we are facing right now, Gus. I hope that my English can be very clear because I don't know if I have a very strong Spanish accent.
Your English is A plus. You do have a strong Spanish accent, yes, ma'am, but your English is A plus, A plus. Wow, there's
Thank you very much.
Yes, ma'am, gracias. There's de nada, excuse, my Spanish is F. There's so much information to process. I guess to start, are you a native of Venezuela?
Yes, I am. I was born and raised in Venezuela, in Caracas, but I have to leave as a consequence of the whole situation that we are facing. For no one in the region, in South America, it is a secret that working with human rights is dangerous right now. No, it's not easy to face or to defend victims of human rights abuses, considering the system that it was and it is right now in Venezuela. For that reason, I was discussing about the necessity of having a transitional justice process. No? We have hundreds of victims. It's horrible, the situation, as I said. We have many bases to talk about it: political, ideological, cultural, ethnical. It's very complex. So it is important to talk with the audience what is actually happening there, what can we do regarding Venezuela.
Wow. And how long has it been since you left Venezuela?
9 years. 9 years already. I was able to travel to my country for a few times, but during the last 2 years, it had been impossible, to be honest. It has been really impossible because it was a very risky situation. Really, really, really risky situation. For that reason, most people who work with human rights, it is important to highlight that lawyers that work with human rights are subject to many threats, many problems, okay? Because we don't see the skin color, political ideology, religion. We just defend human beings. We just defend the human race, to put it that way. And that creates problems because power doesn't like to be controlled. Power doesn't like to be controlled. So for that reason, the work that is done by human rights defenders is really, really important. And as a result of this work, we realize the problem that we are facing, and that probably we noticed, but we didn't say, oh yes, we have racism in Venezuela. And until that, all the problem of the extrajudicial killing erode the system. When we start to listen to victims, when we start to analyze the situation, and this is very critical because we used to have, and still we have, a government who said that they defend poor people, Afro-descendants, indigenous people, that they represent all the sectors, but the reality is telling us other things, other things that can be appreciated beyond political actors, what is happening in the United Nations reports that are very credible, in the work done by the Inter-American Commission of Human Rights, by the Inter-American Court of Human Rights. And sadly, we are in a country where international crime has been committed in order to maintain control. What I want to say with this, that the problem in Venezuela is not just tied to oil, okay? This is important, and against the invasion, because right now the result that we have is that the Conrad, the friends of Maduro, are in the power. The criminal structure still is there. Still we have political prisoners. We have victims of torture, horrible tortures. I don't want to tell all the tortures or the kind of tortures we have identified, because they are very disturbing, committed by political forces. And then I would like to focus mainly in the situation of the Afro-descendants people, dark-skinned people, indigenous. When I began to write this article, I faced many problems to do it because of the access to victims, to hear them. And I have to focus just one group. This group was Afro-descendants and dark-skinned people, because as I detailed in the manuscript, we are the result of a process of mestizaje, as we say in Spanish. But indigenous people, they need or I promised to myself to talk also about indigenous people, how indigenous people has been killed, has been under torture, everything to control the piece of land where they live. For instance, right now in Venezuela, we have the arco minero, or the mineral arc, will be the proper translation in English. And their land have been explored in order to find gold, in order to find gold and different minerals that are very important in the world that we have today. So Venezuela is not only rich in oil, the country is also rich in different kind of minerals. And those people, many indigenous, has been under bad treatment and killings also, because the government force have tried to control those places. And when you read and when you hear victims, indigenous victims, of all the crimes that had been committed in those lands, you can cry. I mean, it's horrible. It's horrible what they can describe too. So what I want to say this, because the invasion is bad. It is condemnable under the UN Charter, of course. The other problem that we are facing is that we have the convoy of Nicolas Maduro in the power too. But it's true, it cannot forget that his regime was a criminal regime, a very criminal regime. But they were very, very clever, and they were very good in gaining supporters by what they say in their speeches, And they said, oh, we are facing this problem and this problem. Most of them could be true, because it is true that colonialists create problems in the region. It is true that many governments from the United States have interfered in internal affairs of the Americas, the total of Americas. And right now we can see that. We just need to read the history in the Americas, how the America organization was constructed, and Pan-Americanism, how that idea was there to defend all those values of liberty, freedom, to do what you need and what you want according to human rights, universal human rights, The history of the America is full of example. When I say America, I refer to all the Americas, all the Americas in total, because I know that there is a technicism in English that most of the time when people from the United States hear the words America, they believe that they are talking just with, about them. But the concept for us, for Hispanic of Latin America, is more broad. It's like, hey, all of us are Americans. You are my brother, you are my sister. We are in the same team. We are in the same region. We share the same piece of land. Why do we need to have all those divisions created by politics? I mean, it could sound very ideological, or sometimes very like, oh, it is a dream, but no, it is a true. Actually, when I say my brothers and sisters, because I say my brothers and sisters of Latin America, and also my brothers and sisters and people from the United States, from Canada, because we share somehow some kind of history that is very common. We are countries that have developed and have fought against colonialism, that try to find their places and try to reaccommodate our societies. In any case, going back to the main subject, the Maduro regime, and also Chavez regime, they shared a very nice speech that gained support at the international level, but no one knew what was happening actually in those circles, or in those places, sorry. What is important to highlight this, because poor people, people who was racialized under this logic, has been the main victims of all this. And if we want to understand this, we need to go back to the history of the Americas. Why? Because most of the places where African descendants are settled are the same places where colonialists brought forced to leave those people that came from Africa during the slavery times. It is true that despite this reality, the mestizaje process wasn't banned. It was not prohibited. We are the sons and daughters of that mix. We are the sons and daughters, and we are proud to share European blood, indigenous blood, African blood. However, there are sectors that they don't see this like an heritage, and they see it like not a good thing at all. I don't know if are you there?
Oh, absolutely. I've been listening intently. Just as I said, I've been trying to learn. I'm so ignorant about this part of the world. I wanted to ask a question because you emphasized your focus on the mistreatment of the Afro-Indigenous population, dark-skinned people in Venezuela and the violence that they are subject to. And I wanted to talk about that. But I guess just in terms of, to help us kind of put this violence in context and how racism operates in Venezuela, for you personally, I've seen pictures of you. You have pictures on your university faculty page. In Venezuela, would you be accepted as a white person, or are you thought of as a non-white person in Venezuela?
In Venezuela, I'm a mestiza.
Mestiza.
Yes, I have blood from Africa, from indigenous blood and European blood. I'm totally mestiza. So I'm dark skin. My hair is indigenous hair, to put it that way. I have clear eyes, so I'm mestiza, totally mestiza. I'm very proud of my heritage. And this is something that is very critical because as I'm dark skin, I have identified as a woman, as a human rights defender, the kind of racism that we can find. For instance, in Venezuela, the racism is very subtle, It's not like the racism that you had in the United States or in South Africa, because most people associate racism, that kind of system. For instance, the apartheid. In Venezuela, is a mestizo country, it's difficult to identify. And for that reason, it has been also difficult to make very clear to the audience, to the people in Venezuela, yes, you are assuming racist position. For instance, they have expressions like you have bad hair, which means in Spanish, pelo malo, because you have tightly curly hair. That could be understood as bad hair. So you can see many women that try to change their hairstyle. If you are dark skin, for instance, in my case, when I was younger than I am right now, they used to exist, and still you can find them, some kind of public discotheque. Can I say that? Or discotheque, where you're going to party, to a bar or whatever.
Oh, see.
Yes, it is possible. Yes, thank you. Where you were identified by your skin color. Your skin color, if you were dark skin, probably you could be rejected from that place. I leave it because most of my friends, some of my friends are from African descent too. We were prohibited to go inside to the place, And that was one of the reasons that Chavez took the power, because as he had this strong speech, like how it is possible that we don't have dark-skinned people or African descended people on TV. For instance, Miss Venezuela, if you see Miss Venezuela, yes, they are very famous, but most of them, they copy the European style, not the mestizo woman that prevails in Venezuela. And you can find the racism so in that kind of example if you go to the media. And this is a common complaint from actors and actors, that they said, it is awful, just because of my skin color, I'm given papers to work like the criminal, like the malandro that you asking me. What is a malandro? Like the poor people, even the TV have stereotypized this kind of context, no? In TV, you can see that the richest and the most powerful were people white, the dark skin or African descendant. You were portrayed like you are the criminal. You are the poet in the film or in the soap opera. And that was the kind of situation that you live in Venezuela. Like, that's super racist. They don't say, no, it's not racist. It's because we just want certain attribution for this kind of actress or actors or whatever. But you have the manifester. For instance, you can find sometimes in X, I control very much X, because you can see many discussions how they arise regarding the skin color. Oh, because also in Latin America you can find different type of racism, okay? Against indigenous, against African descendants, dark-skinned people, or because you are from the north of the South America, so in the south of South America they can say, oh, is this you behave bad or you are like this because you are Caribbean. Caribbean, of course, is tied to our African descendants, you are dark skin, you are not probably very good looking. And you see that kind of discussion in Spanish, of course, in X, and it's quite disturbing. And I say, what is happening with those sectors that compete? Who is the whiteness? So what I want to let very clear is that we don't have the white supremacy as you can find it in other countries, but we have those kind of situations around, not even, no, or not only Venezuela, but in all the region, What have said the Inter-American Commission of Human Rights? That this kind of stereotypes has prevailed since colonial times, and that we need to do something. We need to do something about it. We need to teach to people how important human rights are, that it doesn't matter your skin color. You can't be a victim of social profiling or racial profiling. What is important, and now I'm going back to Venezuela. In Venezuela, and I say all to this just in order that you can see how the Maduro government has been acting. The security forces, some victims had said and have expressed to the UN investigators that, for instance, during the raids, the extrajudicial killings, they used to say, let's look for poor people, or let's chase for poor people. Like, what is happening? What is this? And what is the result of poor people? For the reason I was making reference to the situation during the colonial times, most of the killings, the extrajudicial killings that are executed in Venezuela, that right now surpass the number of 20,000 victims of extrajudicial killing. is that they are mainly focused in those barrios. Barrios are the words in Spanish in Venezuela to refer to the poorest places in the city or to the poorest towns in the country where dark-skinned or African descendants live. Okay? So this is an important detail. Yes, you can find extrajudicial killing, but those extrajudicial killings are totally directed against or are located specifically in those cities where most African descendants and dark-skinned people live. No? And that's an important indicator of this the racism that we have in Venezuela. But the racism is also tied to social exclusion. No, to social exclusion because it is proved by sociological studies that if you have a lighter skin color, you are more probably to get better positions if you are looking for a job, for instance. No. In universities, you don't see that exactly, but yes, when you are trying to find jobs. There was a period when oil was but this was previous to Chavez, that we have all the gains from the oil, that people, they can get a better life without considering their skin color. But at some point, we missed that. And how we missed that? Where we started to relocate and to see again, and again, how those special collectives were excluded. One example was the law on vagrants and delinquents, that in Spanish the name would be Ley sobre Vagos y Maleantes. No? Or why that law was important in the 90s? Because with that law, I don't talk about this law in this article. This law is important because it started to settle, the vision that criminals or malandros are equal to African descendant or dark-skinned people. And you could ask, how is this possible? Because the criteria to take people to the jail was very, very sad, very disgusting. Like, it depends. If the police can see that someone have certain features, certain characteristics, they can take that person to prison, and this law was very, very constructed in a racist view. That law was derogated, and they changed with the new constitution and the new criminal law and said, no, this law violates, obviously, human rights. We can't defend this kind of position, but many people was in prison because of that law. Of course, people who couldn't pay, who didn't lie according to the stereotypes that looks put it into semicolons or that looks very nice on TV. If you know what I mean, I don't know if something is not very clear, please interrupt me and I can explain it again. So people who was outside of that description given on TV of people like this, they finish on the prison because according to this law. So human rights groups, they were really, really against this law, and they tried to change it. The law changed. However, some practice in the security forces still remain on those grounds. Why it is important? For instance, an example that I have. my brother, my husband, and one of our really best friend were in a car, having just a good time. and the police made them stop and asked them what were they doing. So they suddenly took my husband. We are a mixing married. My husband, he is white, and the police asked him, please tell us if that guy, dark skin, is doing something to you, like he's a criminal or he's doing something to you. My husband was shocked, like, no, he's not. He's a friend of mine. And I say, okay, you can go. What was the deter that is missing there? The police was slightly clearer than our friend, if you know what I mean. What I want to graph it is that this man, he was not white, totally white. He was a little bit probably dark skin, but he had the idea that our friend probably was a criminal that was kidnapping my husband because he was dark skin and my husband was white, or he's white, So you can see how the police and the security force still works under this view of the law on vagrants and delinquents. So what happened? The Madurismo and the Chavismo, they form a society where they can do whatever they want. When I say whatever they want, it's because our law, our constitution was totally violated, and those sectors or those vulnerable groups were subjected to all this repression, horrible repression, because the regime, they didn't want dissidents. No, I don't want dissidents in my regime, because if I talk in favor of the African descendants or the dark-skinned people or the indigenous people, it is not good for my political agenda. That the world can see that they're protesting against me. And of course they have the right to protest, and their demands are valid and still are valid, because they were claiming for hospitals, to have access to hospital, to have access to water running to their homes. They want access to education, because we have a horrible humanitarian crisis that has been manipulated in order to control the society. When I say to control the society, it's because social, economical, and cultural rights of our people has been manipulated. What I mean with this? Well, if you don't vote or if you don't sign in the political party of the government, you won't have right to go to a public hospital, probably attended by a Cuban doctor, not by a Venezuelan doctor. You won't have access to education, and as you gain so little amount of money, I won't give you food, because the humanitarian crisis in Venezuela have developed in some levels that are horrible. I mean, people, they didn't have what to eat. They went eating from the rubbish that they found on the street. That was the situation in Venezuela. That was what Maduro and the regime was defending. What is the bad thing too? That all these people was emigrating, for instance, to other countries, looking for a better position, to gain some kind of dignity, but they has been satanized. Now all Venezuela belongs to El Tren de Aragua in the United States. This is a huge lie. All the Venezuelans are criminal, for God's sake. All the Venezuelans are being, many of them, under discriminatory law right now in the United States, has been victim also of discriminatory actions from different social groups, because they are Venezuelans, they are Latins. So now you can't speak Spanish because that is a crime. No, sir, Mr. or lady, no, this is not a crime. You are protected by human rights. You are protected by human rights. Please, have a look and read what are human rights recognized by international law, recognized by international organizations, and you can discriminate based also in the nationality. So what we have is an intersection of discrimination because of your skin color, because of your nationality, because your social class, because also this is a huge reality. For instance, in Latin America, we have a separation considering the social class. Poor people, most of the time, is not liked by others. People is called, they want to be surrounded by rich people, by fame, and they have that idea, and the poor is like, I don't want to be with poor people. This is something uncomfortable for me. I don't like their problem. I don't want to be with them. They are going to create a problem. And that people can work. They have dignity. They have rights. And this is something that many others forget. Forget. So now it is good to highlight that Maduro or the Venezuela situation was under investigation by the International Criminal Court, which is an international court which have the jurisdiction to judge at the international level people who are involved in international crimes, okay? They don't see, or their law is not based on discrimination, politics, religions, or whatever. They have, for instance, condemned the genocide in Palestine, the crimes committed there. They have called for the detention also of Putin for the crimes committed in Ukraine. And I'm doing this explanation because I want to leave very clear that it's a court that just wants to deliver justice. Also, it was under investigation the Venezuela situation as a whole of what is happening in Venezuela, why people is being killed, tortured, manipulated by this regime. What personally I was expecting is that they were judged by an international court, and made justice to all the victims that we have, because we have hundreds of victims, hundreds. And if we talk about victims because their economic, social, and cultural rights has been violated, we could say easily that we have 8 million victims. 8 million victims who have fled the country, But what is the problem? For instance, the administration of the President of the United States has been punishing the judges of the International Criminal Court. And this is a huge truth. They have some sanctions against the judges, and people vinculated to the court. So under that pressure, have an international court can work properly, How can you raise the flag of justice if you have that kind of pressure? Because we do have international institutions that can do the work, but if countries, states, don't allow them to do or to make their job, we are going to have unjust wars, and it will prevail the violations to international law. And we are in that moment right now. So what could be done where that these horrible criminals can be judged on an international court, that Venezuela can open a transitional justice processes, not that the Conrad of Maduro can hold the power, that they can have the operativity of the security forces that behave as they have been doing during all this year, try to make people fear of express their ideas. And after the 3 January, the problem was beside this situation of the attack in Venezuela. The problem is that the narrative of narcotics is dilating the commission of international crimes that by conception are the most horrible crimes that can be committed against anyone. And we are in that point. Still, we don't know where Venezuela will go. I wrote an article that was published 2 weeks ago related to narcotraffic and Venezuela for a blog, Opinio Juris, where you can find more details about this actual situation.
Dr. Thairi Moya Sánchez joining us live from Madrid, Spain. I appreciate so much of the detail that you shared, especially around the targeted violence against the Afro-descended and dark-skinned population in Venezuela, and particularly the incident that happened with you and your husband, who you said is classified as white, and his friend, who I guess is a non-white male, and this officer who is also non-white, but stopped you all and thought you all had been kidnapped by this black male or non-white male and was checking to make sure everything is okay. I guess for our listeners who are outside of Venezuela, can you help us, Dr. Thairi, can you help us understand how does all of this violence and racism, anti-black racism against dark-skinned people and black people, how does all of this exist in an environment where it seems like there are not very many people classified as white? How does this happen? How does all of this in an environment where it seems like there just aren't too many white people around?
Well, as I said, Venezuela is a mestizo country, so we can find white people, dark-skinned people, African-descendant people. We can have everything. Actually, if you see my family is a nice example of that. We are all those mixing processes running into our blood. According to some sociologists, this is a result because some colonial families, despite the time that the colonial times finished in Venezuela, because it was one of the youngest countries in the world to reach independence. They have an interesting history regarding this situation. But in any case, according to some sociologists, this is the result because those original families who were white, they didn't mix and they control the strongest part of the economy in the country. And as a result, this situation has been running through all the descendants until nowadays. Nowadays, we have those families still managing some important part of the economy. It's difficult. It's difficult for the reason I talk about a shameful racism, because people know that it exists, despite that you can have that blood running in your veins. Some people still renegade of that. So it's more difficult to identify racism in mestizo country than in country where that mestizaje was not developed. So you were identifying those practices, as I said. The selection of people on TV, and the selection of who could be a criminal according to the criminal system, the places where all of those police goes to detain those supposedly criminal, no. And it's a racism that is inside the society. No one likes to talk, but they know that racism exists. You just need to start to question why this or this or this. Also happen against indigenous people, okay? Or in the way that they behave, and how the social structure have excluded them. We have the most beautiful constitution in the world, calling for indigenous rights, for instance. But in the practice, you see that the public policy are not well intended. The poorest sector in the country are those vulnerable groups. Indigenous African descendants are the more vulnerable groups in Venezuela. The situation for indigenous even twice awful, twice horrible. You can see them begging for money, for food on the streets, or in their little towns where they live, and they do not have access to medicines, to education. I mean, the Constitution is dead. It's a letter that is dead and has been dead during the last year. I know, however, that if you make an interview to someone who represent or who want to defend the Venezuelan system, they will say, no, that is a lie. We have to do this. You just can say, please go and check the human rights records of the country according to the different international treaties, the UN system, what the International Criminal Court said, and fair enough. After reading that, tell me if you are going to defend that. I mean, if you want to make justice for the people that you feel a connection, please claim for justice, for an international justice. That will be the idea. For international justice, where they can see, or they can perceive that they can be heard. Victims need to be heard. Victims in all his forms need to be heard. They need to talk about what's happened, because who have the power, they can control everything. But who defend the victims? And Venezuelan people have been a victim from different point of view. Oh, you want to make poor, to make feel, one could say, you want to make feel that your people is poor because you have a political agenda. No, I don't have a political agenda. I don't care the political agenda. What I care is what to my brother and sister has been suffering during all this year. So if you want to do something good for them, please raise your voice, claim for justice, for international justice, and that they can tell their truth, no? Because a human rights defender never, ever defend a government, because government are the one who violates human rights. And this is important for the audience who probably is not familiar to this term, that human rights are the prerogative that we have as citizens against the absolute power of the state, no? Because humans who are in front of the state power, there are anything. And for that reason, it's important the proper application of the law without discrimination. In the inter-American system, we have something very, very, very beautiful. It's a pity that the United States is not part of the convention, the San Jose Convention, because it is an instrument that we have in the Organization of American States. And when a violation is determined, it is said that every violation of human rights always is tied to Article 1 and Article 2 of the Convention. What does it mean? Well, it means that all the violations of human rights are based on a discrimination. Always. They don't see the violation of that right individually. They always connected to discrimination because it is true. It is true. When we are facing human rights abuses, always there is a reason. Probably because you don't have my same skin color, you don't have my religion, you don't have the same origin, you don't have the social class that I have, you don't have the views or the same views that I want to impose in the society. A society, in order to succeed, it is important, the tolerance of ideas. But the limit of those ideas are the human rights of other people. No, you can defend your idea, but you can't tolerate or violate the human rights of other people, because if we continue in this way, we are going to inculcate more hate in the society. And it is not a solution to call for more hate. You know, what we need is to educate human rights in values. Why do we have that situation? What would be nice? For instance, the United States is one of the countries that is not part of the Human Rights Convention of America. That would be very nice, that the citizens of the United States could have access to those mechanisms. Well, most people, they don't like those mechanisms. However, it's good that you can know that. It would be great if the United States can be part of those international organizations, international treaty, because they will reinforce the system, and also they reinforce the internal system. No? I strongly believe that. Some people might argue that the United States doesn't need to be part of international treaty because their system work. International treaties based on human rights, it is not a problem. It's actually a plus for the societies and for all the sectors that live in the United States. There are many things behind this idea, many procedural steps probably, but it would be a bit sad to have the United States integrated to the international system, but fully integrated, not like, oh yes, I'm part of this, but I'm not going to accomplish with those ideas. And I think that position will bring, and the respect of all those values, will bring more cohesion in the society in the United States. For me, it's very sad to see how migrants are treated right now, how they are being deporting like worse than animals, because even non-humans have rights, you know. It's very sad to see that kind of situation, because you can think, wow, we are failing again as a human. We are defending the bad, leaving the weakest, the weakest in the society alone. That is, it's very sad, I think. I don't know what you think, Gus, but for me, it's very sad that. Yes?
It's beyond. It's tragic, and it's flagrant racism with the deportations, because they've had numerous
Yes, of course.
officials, not just witnesses or citizens or bystanders. They've had numerous citizens. Even one of the federal judges has said that this is a policy to flagrantly pursue non-white people. They're not looking for. We had a guest on our program yesterday. She was born in Australia. And she
Yes.
came to the States for a decade to study racism. And I said, man, she would have no concern. She's back in Australia now, but if she was here, they're not looking for her. Australian white person, get out of the way. No problem. We don't need to see your green card. We don't need to see your beat it. Move, move, move. We got dark people that we're looking for. A flagrant campaign of white
Yes.
supremacy racism. So yeah, it's been tragic and racist. I guess
It is.
with if I could ask, with the extrajudicial violence in Venezuela, do you think these campaigns are these campaigns flagrant acts of racial cleansings? Like, is this we deliberately want to reduce the population of dark people, or is there something else happening?
No, for sure there is something else happening. Okay, we haven't identified racial cleansing. No, we haven't identified that. Despite all these trends that we have identified of the victim of extrajudicial killing, we can't say that it is racial cleansing. Some have argued from the human rights wars that could be a social cleansing based on the speech, because they said, oh, we are fighting against the malandro. Sorry, even a malandro, even a criminal have rights. It is difficult for some people to understand that, like, yes, he probably commits a crime, but we need to protect at least a nuclear of right, like the due process that person can have the right. Human right doesn't mean or can be interpreted like I'm going to pardon or clean or forget the crime that was committed. No, that's not the vision of human rights. No, that as a misconception that some people have. No, the thing is that person have the opportunity to be heard in a tribunal or by a court, depending on in the country, that they can defend, they can have a lawyer, they can testify what's happening, and not to impose a sentence just because I want to impose a sentence, if you know what I mean. In any case, they have through watching the scenario telling, no, they were malandros, they were criminals who deserves to die, sorry. But so far it has been a tool for social control of the poor people. As I said, poverty in Venezuela is very tied to skin color due to historical developments. There was a period of time that they were able to change their position, to get better in the social ascension, but right now with the Madurismo, it was not possible again. It was not possible. It stopped. It totally stopped because people start to leave the country. In any case, it could say that a social cleansing could be, according to human rights theories, but according to most technical languages, are killings. Are killings based on this social discrimination, which is supported by these or sociological studies that we can find. What will be important in Venezuela one day is that if we have the chances to evaluate the situation, to determine more the scenes, that the killers used to say, to hear more the victims in the expression, because I haven't said to the audience that, for instance, when the police raids, they were deployed in one of those poor cities, and I mean cities, not even neighbors, okay? I want to make emphasis of that, no? Cities, towns where those people live for historical reasons, as I said, where those first African descendants arrived in the country. They used to kill the young men because the killing were directly against African descendants, young men, and of course there's killing men and women. Women were all subject to sexual violence in their houses, and their houses were under the situation that they can, or they could steal, or the few things that they could have in their homes, that they represent a little of value. For instance, they took their TV or their home computer. I mean, the crimes have other connections with other crimes. Ironic, yes, security forces. That was the ironic of the situation. So Venezuela has been facing that repression during all this year, sadly, but now they are subject to repression in other countries, based on this racism, in this social perception, like the migrant is bad for the society, like migrants are criminals, they don't have the right, no, sir, they have rights too, they have human rights. But that speech don't like, as I said, to any person who hold the power, any person. And for that reason, I insist always to my students that it's important of teaching human rights. Even when people are in the nursery school, even from that age, that is not a distraction or a dream. No, it is possible. Even here in Europe, some countries have developed this kind of policy to teach human rights from the beginning of life. Yes, I can hear you.
Oh, okay. I wanted to ask really quick too, as well. I looked, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. In the context of the kind of devaluing of Afro-descended people and features that you talked about before, you argue that racism in your report on extrajudicial violence, you write that racism in Venezuela is taboo and symbolic. How does the widespread commercial availability of skin bleaching products serve as proof of the structural racial hierarchy that you say enables these killings in the barrios? So do they have these skin bleaching products in Venezuela?
For whitening your skin?
Yes, ma'am.
You mean?
See.
No, we don't have. We don't
Oh,
have.
Okay.
We don't have. It is interesting, this kind of racism. As I said, it's more difficult to identify racism in a mestizo society than in a society where this process was not lived. That is the contradictory problem to determine to find how racism work on this and on this matter, no? Because racism, it is important to leave this idea clear. It depends in the context, who fear the superior and who are the inferior. Like that is the logic in racism. For instance, Latin people, sadly, according to some report, they have perceived racism from different racial group in the United States. You know what I mean? From different skin color. because they somehow feel powerful than those people who are arriving in their country. So the logics in racism are very complicated, and every country have their own problem and the way that they perceive racism, the way that they face it, and the way they try to resolve it. Because at the end, this is a problem that we need to resolve it. How we can resolve racism? By education. It sounds like, no, that is a dream. No, sorry. It's the only way. It's one of the only way to have people who are really committed to translate the idea that racism is bad. That does not exist any erasure about other. We are all the same. We are equal because we are human beings, no? And that is the main idea of human rights. And that is what we need to fight for. Education, civil values, to say, we are humans, all we have feelings, all we have the same demands. I mean, I need to eat, I need to go to the school, I want to work, I need to have water or food because I'm a human being. You know what I mean? And just for the reason that I'm living, I need that dignity to be recognized by all the members in the society because I'm a human being. And that is the part where society has been failing because they don't recognize the other, like, you are my brother, you are my sister. My people say, no, that is horrible idea. But we are humans. We are no aliens. You know what I mean? And when you go to Latin America, we have something very nice that we call sister and brother to the other peoples in the region, as I told at the beginning of this program. No? You are my sister, you are my brother. You are my brother even if you are in the United States because we say, we share, the condition of being human. We share the condition of living in the same continent, probably to have the same value, to have the same interests. So you are my brother. I don't care who you are or what is your skin color or whatever, you know what I mean. But that is the idea that haven't been properly constructed in society. It's easy to talk about this. No, it's not easy because there is a lot of hate, of course, provoked by the actions of others. But we can't perpetuate hate. And that's the reason why transitional justice is important. Because transitional justice helps society to reconstruct their past and to find a common path to follow. And without that important step, the hate will prevail, the injustice will prevail in that society. For that reason, I said that transitional justice in Venezuela will be important because there are people who genuinely believe in Maduro promises, Chavez promises, people who are opposition, because there was another side, or people from the opposition was also satanized by the government. And it's not bad to be opposition. That are the checks and balances that all the society needs, because if I want that my idea prevails, so something is wrong with me. I need to empathize and to hear all the members in the society. That is the secret of a democracy, of a real democracy, of a democracy with values, with a society with values. But that word has been forgotten, sadly, by other heads that had been provoked in different communities. I retake the idea transitional justice is important. It's important. All the groups that had been subject to racism around the world, they need to have that process to heal their heart, because at the end your heart is the one who is all with all those mix of feelings, of ideas that you don't know how to express. So transitional justice is a crucial factor in societies right now. How to reach a point of agreement, how we can recognize the good and the bad things that have happened during that time, how we can reconstruct the society from the ashes, how we can reconstruct all the feelings that we have. Romantic could sound romantic for some people, but it's necessary. It's important. The transitional justice, for instance, in South Africa, is emblematic because through this process, the Africans try to heal all the scars that they have. They have the opportunity to tell their story, not to claim them. I mean, like to begging, I need a space to talk, I need a space. No, there was a forum that they can express all their feeling to claim for justice. So transitional justice is really, really, really important for the society, and for Venezuela it would be really, really important because the situation, for instance, of extrajudicial killing, as I said, it has been documented by international organizations. One emblematic case was the case of Uzcategui, Error versus Venezuela in the Inter-American Court of Human Rights. And one of the people testified, one of the experts, and he said, yes, the killings were directed against poor and dark-skinned young men. And this is a strong phrase considering the situation in Venezuela, where racism is not admitted. It's there, but it's not admitted. How that expert gave that opinion, because he had access to all this documentation, to all what it was happening, to the bodies even. So transitional justice will be important to Venezuela, and racism and social exclusion are part of this problem. And because of that situation was in the country, the result was, because it is something that most people don't know, that sometimes authoritarians find that kind of situation, and they make politics from that situation to perpetuate in the power. You know what I mean? So the best way to avoid authoritarians or that the sins repeat again is to face them through process of justice in order to guarantee the no recurrence of the crimes, to gain justice, to gain memory of what happened. For that reason, transitional justice will be important for Venezuela and for all the countries that had faced this kind of situations.
Context of white supremacy. I wanted to ask, and you highlighted again, that a lot of this violence, these extrajudicial killings, that they're focused on poor, Afro-descended, young, dark-skinned males. And with the gendered nature of this violence, so I know you mentioned the concept of malandro, they're criminals, some maybe they're the narco terrorists that Trump has been talking about for some time, but what threat exactly do these dark-skinned males represent, if any?
Any criminals, they don't have a skin color, you know what I mean? Crimes can be committed for any person just for being a person, you know what I mean? They don't represent any threat migrants because they are migrants. There are no criminals per se. There are no criminals just because there are migrants. Legal condition could be, but they have some ways to face that kind of situation. In human rights, there is a word that it is called proportionality. Okay, proportionality is the name of that word. And what it said that according to the facts, or according to the situation, you are going to react with a proper remedy to that situation. So if you overreact, you are going to violate international law, international human rights, and so on. Because what is the problem? What is the problem of discrimination? That sometimes discrimination, there are full of examples in history, can evolve to persecution. And persecution is an international crime, okay? And it is good to say it. For that reason, many presidents, they don't like the International Criminal Code because when the discrimination exacerbates, it can become clearly in persecution. So what happens when there are persecution? Where it's more easily to commit international crimes. For the reason we have international treaties that regulate that. In any case, always we need proportion to the crimes. We can't overreact. And I say this considering the situation of many migrants. That, okay, you have a irregular situation where they can regulate that situation. They can find ways without violating the principle of non-refoulement. That is a word in French of what does it mean? No returning back that people to a country where they are going to face death, persecution, or whatever. Also, that kind of norm exists in international legal order. In any case, it can be, it's hilarious. I mean, I know the situation in the United States, but for me, it's like, I can't believe that the commission of a crime can be tied to a skin color, to a certain skin color, to legal status of documentation, for instance, migration, or what is happening in my home country, Venezuela. No, without going far away from my country. It is unbelievable that we are in the 2026 and still there prevail that awful idea that crimes can be related to skin color. Oh my God, where are we located? What is happening? What is that? It shows me actually that the humans being, instead of looking for a better future, they want to go back. No? And you say, what is happening? Oh my God. It's illogical. It's against any logical idea. Yes, I hear you, Gus.
I was just responding, listening to you. Many of the racists in this, at least in this America, many of the racists, that is the exact, what you just articulated, Dr. Thairi, that is exactly what they have been articulating. Make America great again. Maybe they mean make the Americas great again. They're talking about the whole thing. They want to go back. We don't want to go forward. We want to go back to the way it used to be. Slavery, yes, that's the way we like it. We don't want to be progressive. We're not trying to evolve. None of that. Let's go backwards. And speaking of Trump, with his invasion of Venezuela, do you think with all of this instability, do you think that makes the Afro-descended targets of these extrajudicial killings, does that make them even more vulnerable with all the instability, or does this give them hope that they might get some reprieve?
Well, actually, it will look weird, not necessarily, because we need to documentate what is going to happen right now. This is an story to develop, to see how it's going to evolve. But what is going to be important? What is going to happen in Venezuela? And it has to depend on Venezuelans. There is something that it is called self-determination in international law. Self-determination, it can be translated that people have the right to elect, to choose what they want for their countries, okay? What are the options that they want to put on the table without interference? So we need to wait and see how this story will develop, as I said, how the criminal organization that still is controlling Venezuela will act against the vulnerable groups, how Venezuelans are going to react, because Venezuelans that are still in Venezuela are under fear of that any actions that they can do can evolve in more repression, more repression from the government. So we need for that story. What is important to highlight too is that when you fight for human rights and for international justice, most autocracies, they like to say, these are internal business. Don't talk about it. These are internal business. And the audience needs to know that when we are talking about human rights, human dignity, international crimes, or the possible commission of international crimes, that excuse doesn't apply. Because otherwise will prevail the relevance and the importance of the human rights law and the international protection of vulnerable groups. For the reason those international organizations are important. Why? Because they are going to face that risk that if repression continues as has been occurring during the last 10 years, 15 years with Maduro, I lost the number actually because there has been many years with them, and the repression continue, more probably they will say, this is an internal affair. Or this is because this is this situation, a political, how can I say that? A political intromission, could I say, from other countries. No, sir. When we are facing this kind of crime, that excuse doesn't apply for this situation. So we need to wait what is going to happen in Venezuela in the next months. We need to wait if we are going to have the right to vote for what we want freely. And when I mean freely, it's not only, for instance, from the pressure from the United States, for instance, but also from the pressure from inside the actual regime. What is dangerous? That they can live with the Trump administration, for instance. But for sure, someone from that group also go Maduro, hand over Maduro to the United States. For sure that happened, and it is a secret. In Spanish we say a secreto a voces, a secret that all people knows that someone in the government betrayed Maduro, That is also true because they knew that it was that was not possible to sustain that regime. In any case, we need to wait and see what is going to happen during the next months. what is going to happen with those vulnerable groups, what are going to happen with those extrajudicial killing. As I said, we have around still 1,000 political prisoners in prison. So we need to wait and see. That is something that I'm not Nostradamus. There are many scenarios that could happen.
Appreciate the honesty, Dr. Thairi. We will
You're welcome.
have to stay tuned to see what happens in that part of the world. I guess on a personal level, you in your report, you talked about how risky it can be to discuss racism in Venezuela, and that frequently attacks can be weaponized against the person who tries to speak about these issues. Have you personally faced threats or pressure, either from state actors or from within the academy, to stop speaking about extrajudicial violence against Afro-descended and dark-skinned people?
In the academy, never. In the academy, never. Never. Somehow, not me directly, but my colleagues, yes. My colleagues, yes, because they deal directly with the victims, with the security forces. It's a very complicated situation. Really complicated. In the academia, never. And thanks God, I work right now with the academy because I can translate this kind of situation in an objective way, because I don't have a political agenda. I mean, if I would have an agenda, it will be respect human rights, because I have the opportunity to meet victims of human rights abuses from around the world, victims that are escaping from so very complex scenario. So I feel them, I feel them, I really feel them, and I can translate this kind of situation into academic discussions in order to find, or at least to try to find solutions, no? And the most, as I see victims from around the world, I convince myself that as a humans, we need to find a way to coexist, to try to control the hate or those type of discrimination around the world. Actually, it happened something curious to me. When I see in this world, because I work in international law, obviously, when I see professors or colleagues from Africa, I call them my brother and sister too. Why? Because I have Nigerian blood, so it's difficult not to connect with them. I feel them. Hey, brother, hey, sister. So this is something nice and hilarious could be. And this mixture, as I could say in Spanish, we can feel it even in the music that we hear. No, our music is very symbolic. And we have a lot of African influence, but a lot with the drums and the sounds. It is hilarious because I have friends who have heard the music, for instance, from the coast, and they say, "Oh my God, I'm feeling like I'm in my country." And it's very nice, that connection. So I say, how stupid is the people who, and I'm sorry for what I'm going to say, who think that it is bad to have that mixture, that have that or the representation of humanity running through your blood. Because for some people it might sound, oh my God, no, it's beautiful. It's beautiful because you can connect with different regions, and you can find the ways, for instance, music, food. Our food is very rich with the African culture or the indigenous culture, and I find it beautiful. What can I say? I'm really proud of that. So for the reason racist is, I see it so outdated, so sad, so oh my God. I don't know how to say that honestly, how to describe it. But clever is not clever to be racist. It's not. I'm so sorry. It's not. According to my point of view, it's not. It's not. It's not. It's not. That's it. That's all what can I say about it.
Context of white supremacy. Dr. Thairi, you characterize racism in Venezuela as a taboo topic where even discussing it seems risky, as you said. Have you faced any pressure to prioritize certain aspects of your own heritage or to maintain legitimacy, I guess de-emphasize other aspects where you talked about before where people kind of distance themselves from their dark heritage, Afro-descended heritage, and emphasize their European heritage? Have you felt any of that pressure?
No, no. In my case, no. And I see them like, as I say, outdated. I mean, I think that the human values need to gain in the field and to make them think and to recapacitate about their point of view, you know. And if they try to, for instance, there is a word right now that they are telling me that in South America they were using to refer to Venezuelans, as I said, as a result of the humanitarian crisis. 8 million of Venezuelans fled the country, you know. They create a nickname against Venezuela, Veneco. Veneco, Veneca, as a way to defamate your origin. What we do with that? We use now that terminology in a humor sense in order to make feel stupid to the people who say that to us. Even we have now a song that it is called Veneca. I can send you the song by email if you want to hear it, Gus, one day.
Please.
But the way that, because it is interesting, the Venezuelan situation, because okay, we were subject, those groups, especially those groups, were subject to this discrimination. But when you leave the country, it doesn't matter if you are white, dark skin, African descent. It doesn't matter, because now you are a Venezuelan outside your borderlines, no? And what we did was to retake that word, to reframe it, and giving to that word another meaning and another context to apply it, you know? And it's fun now. Yo era Veneca, yes, I'm Veneca. What is the problem? You know, like, and we make jokes with that. We racist. What we know is joke, like, it doesn't hurt me. It doesn't hurt me because I'm stronger than that. You can't make me feel less than you because of my origin. On the contrary, I'm proud of my mixing blood. I'm proud of my culture. I'm proud of my food. I'm proud of my country despite the problem that we have. Because Chavismo and Madurismo has tried to kill, as we say in Spanish, la venezolanidad. But they haven't been able to do it. And I think that is resilience. That is a nice word that I see. Resilience. Stop to make you feel victim. Use your power and change it. And the way that we have done that is to change the meaning, the social, cultural meaning to those words that you can hurt me, you can make me feel bad because of my origin or because of my blood. Forget it. It's not possible. And that's the way how we work. So a victim of that, you are a victim of this kind of target as long as you permit it. Can you react with violence? I would say no. Because if you react with violence, you are in a worse position. You are giving them the reason. So you have to be more astute to surrender. I don't know if I can say that word, to fight against that kind of discrimination.
Context of White Supremacy. Before we let you enjoy the rest of you, I guess for you, your Monday evening, one question
Yes.
I wanted to ask. Do you consider your position in Madrid, do you consider this a form of necessary exile in order to do your massively important work discussing racism and the problems with these killings in Venezuela?
Well, of course that in Venezuela, I can do this job, for sure. With the previous regime, it was impossible to talk on behalf of my sister and brothers, It was impossible. It was impossible to talk on behalf of them. Many of my colleagues still are there. They are brave enough, and I'm really proud of them. Really, really, really proud of them, because they are facing threats. For sure, they are facing threats, and I'm very proud of them. But not. No. During the last years, I wasn't able to write this kind of papers. Let the international community what is happening with my sisters and brother, because as I said, this is a huge turbulence to a regime that presume to defend the African ancestry, our African descendants, ancestors. Sorry, pardon. Or for a government who presume to defend indigenous people, it was contradictory for them. So, of course not. This kind of job is so easy to do in that job, in that country. Sorry, it's not possible to do this job there. But here we are trying to make visible this kind of situation, to make visible to some organizations that they need to check what is happening with those social groups in the Venezuelan situation. And for instance, right now I will start to write about migrants. What are the challenges of migrants? It would be interesting to determine also how skin color has been a reason for this massive expulsion of migrants, how this hate speech has been spreading in the social networks against certain groups. So that to do this kind of jobs, for instance, in Venezuela, no, it was not possible at that period of time. Let's see, as I said, what is going to happen in the next months.
With, I guess, with the violence against the Afro-descended individuals in Venezuela, it seems like the jokes are a casual component of that, and just related to the general devaluation of Black life, Afro-descended life. You mentioned the palo malo, the bad hair. You talked about that before.
Yes.
Do you recall some of the other, I guess, jokes, we'll say, that are directed against Afro-descended and dark-skinned people in Venezuela?
We have, when I mean we have, I refer to myself like Venezuela, but we have different, but they are quite a little bit difficult to translate it into English in order to preserve the meaning, For instance, regarding to jobs, there are some jokes, bad jokes. I mean, that's no jokes. But yes, we have more than pelo malo, that is more a description, physical description. Also, there is a movie. Is I don't know how your Spanish skills are right now. We have a film called Pelo Malo. And that film was important because it reflects for the first time in Venezuela how the racism was established in our country. No? And the story goes around a boy who was African descendant and how he was subject of discrimination because of his skin color and hair. No? In that film, you can find all those jokes against African descendants or dark-skinned people. Also, we have a great novelist, Rómulo Gallegos, who described the racism during colonial times or post-colonial times. So he has a novela that in Spanish is also writing a story called Pobre Negro in Spanish. No, it is often, despite the racism that we have, there are some words that in certain contexts can be perceived very bad. In Venezuela, it doesn't happen because also we use those certain features to express love. You know, it's weird. It's weird the situation in Venezuela in the social groups. No, it's very complex, as I said at the beginning. But in those, for instance, in those examples, you can find a lot of this context that you want to know a little bit more.
Pobre Negro. Wow, they made
Yes.
this into a television show. That's amazing. I'm gonna get.
No, it's not a television show. It's a novel, literature, but it's great because it describes the racism in Venezuela post colonial times, and that was the way that the author fight racism. You know, like how was possible the African descendant people was treated in this way. You know, it's very interesting because Latin American literature is not known in the United States. So it will be very good to put you in the context on how this works in Latin America, or at least in Venezuela, okay? As I said, every country have their social structures, and they vary, and the way that they work vary too.
Wow. Okay, So we should read Pobre Negro and then
Yes,
maybe watch the documentary Pelo Malo.
yes, it will
Okay.
be great if you can do that.
Okay. I'm going to add that to my studies. Are there any Afro descent, like you talked about the danger of doing this work in Venezuela? Are there any like Afro descended professors or scholars who write about racism in Venezuela?
Oof, difficult talk.
Stacy.
Because, as Briseño said, many people avoid to talk about racism because it can be used a political flap. You know, as it has been used a political flap, many scholars has avoid to talk about it. However, in my article, you can find the name of some Venezuelan author that talk about it. What is the slightly problem that you will face? That the most of the research is writing in Spanish, not in English. So sorry about it.
I have to learn a
A
little.
good reason to learn Spanish, you see?
See, have to brush up on my
Yeah.
Espanol. Did you say Stacy Kartok? Did I get it correct?
What?
Stacy Kartok, for Afro-descended scholar who writes about racism. Stacy, or did I miss? didn't hear correctly.
Briseño, Briseño, Briseño.
Briseño.
Yes, Briseño.
Briseño. Briseño. Do you quote his work in extrajudicial violence or?
Yes, I call it.
Oh,
He's
okay,
very
okay, okay.
good. He's very good calling about it. There are other Venezuelans who are from different skin colors, okay, but they are conscious of the problem that we have with the system that is very discriminatory in many ways, okay. Probably if you can pay, you can be free. If you can't pay, you will be in the jail forever and ever, even more, as I said, no. So there are some logics very complex behind the Venezuela situation.
Okay, okay. I found his work in the. I see you referenced him a few times. I got the Venezuela classes, sociales y
Yes,
individualos. That's Briseño. Briseño.
Briseño, yes, you can
Briseño.
read.
Thank
Yes,
you. I will do my
you're welcome.
will do my research, see if I can learn a little bit more. But wow, I think I even got through my questions and making sure I didn't miss anything in the time that we have you on the broadcast. I have learned so much. The report that we've been talking about, extrajudicial killings in Venezuela, confronting the legacy of racism and poverty through transitional justice. I guess before we let you go, we've been asking folks that we, talk to on a regular basis use the term racism. And it's been my conclusion that many times non-white people around the world, we either don't have a definition for racism or there'll be a lot of confusion around that term. In Venezuela, the term racism, is there like a common understanding if you use the term racism? What do people think you mean if you say racism in Venezuela?
Exclusion by skin color.
Exclusion.
But I will add that it goes exclusion and superiority in racism. People who are racism, who practice racism, they believe that they are superior in any way against the people who they discriminate, and for that reason, it's important education. I will say again. No, I want to reaffirm that idea. Racism is bad. It's a contrary idea to the most important values that we have as human beings. And the way, in my opinion, to fight against is with education. With education, because the problem of racism is that politicians use it like a political flag, for good or for bad. They use it as a political flag. So talking in terms of human rights, it can be manipulated by different sectors. It can be identified, even victims of racism can be racist to against another social group, and we need to fight against that under all the ways given by law. We need to fight against that. I again will say no through violence. Violence is not the way. It's my opinion, because it's giving the reason to the people who hate you. You can't kill ideas. Your ideas will be present for all the times. You can shoot them, you can kill them. However, who use the force is the one who is wrong, according to myself. And I'm so sorry if I can hurt some point of view, but I think that understanding we can't by any means to convert in the person that we are fighting against, because it's giving them the reason. You know, if you are fighting against a monster, you can't be a monster too. No. You need to be focused on yourself, on your values, and try to fight according to the tools that we have. It's what I think about racism for what I have seen around the world. Gus. Education and more human rights is what I would say.
More education. That is the whole reason that we had Dr. Thairi with us today, trying to learn. I'm going to go and see if I can get the documentary Palo Malo so I can
Yes.
learn about racism down in South America. I have learned so much. The report again, extrajudicial killings in Venezuela, confronting the legacy of racism and poverty through transitional justice, recently published in the International Journal of Human Rights, Volume 30. I have learned a ton. I'm going to get my copy of Pobre Negro right now. I can read that as well. But you have been awesome, Dr. Thairi. Thank you so much for being so generous
Thank you
with your
to you.
Monday
Thank you to
evening.
you for time, for your interest on this work.
Oh, for sure. Please keep up your much needed work. Stay safe, and we'll be looking forward to your future publications so that we can keep learning.
Okay, thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Buenas noches.
Buenas noches. Goodbye.
Context of White Supremacy. Again, our guest joining us live from Madrid, Spain, Dr. Thairi Moya Sánchez, author of Extrajudicial Killings in Venezuela. Man, so glad we could have her on the broadcast. I'm so ignorant about Venezuela and most everything else in the world, but I've been so just, like I said, they had kept showing pictures of people in Venezuela and Maduro, once they kidnapped him and were bringing him here and everything. It's like, wow, what, these people look kind of dark to me, and do they have white people there? And what, I had just been very curious for a long time to learn more. So I'm so glad we got to talk to her, and I'm gonna see if I can we'll take our commercial break. I think it'll be a lot easier to find the book Pobre Negro than the documentary Palo Malo, but I don't know. We will see. We'll take a quick commercial break, and then we will be right back, give a quick thought or two, and then let folks know kind of what to expect the rest of this week, wrapping up Negro History Month. But we'll be right back. Context of White Supremacy.
Got another term on there, VGQ. What does that mean? Victims Guaranteed Qualification. Now, that keeps you from getting into arguments with other black people, particularly on television, which I get sick of that. Black people shouting. We get into our ghetto thing once we get on television and get wound up. And we start all yelling at once. And the racists sit there smugly and just look. They watch the tennis match, so to speak. Right. And black people are shouting each other down, talking about, you don't know what you're talking about, and so and so and so and so, and we go into our Amos and Andy Sapphire Act. Okay. VGQ means Victims Guaranteed Qualification. Guaranteed qualification to do what? To give your opinion on anything about race. Don't care what it is. If you're on there with Minister Farrakhan, or you're on there with Mike Tyson, or you're on there with Miss, what's her name, Williams, the lady that had him put in, recommended that he be put in jail, or you're on there with anybody. So you don't cut the other black person down. Now, I don't even like that term brother and sister, even though it's been around for about 30 years. Well, I ain't going to talk about the brother here. No. See, we haven't reached that stage where we can do that. See, we got to crawl before we walk, but we don't miss any steps. Don't say you are what you're not. Don't say you feel something that you don't really feel. You don't really feel that he's a brother. I usually use the expression, I don't like anybody in here. I say that to all audiences. I haven't been taught to like anybody. I've been taught to dislike people. I've been taught that. And then they're taught to dislike me, so it's just compounded disliking. I haven't even got to love yet. All right? So what we do is minimize conflict, try not to hurt each other. So a certain thing, that's what a code is for. It's a stopgap. It keeps me from saying something against you. You say, well, don't you agree with what this person just said down here on the other end and whatnot? That person has VGQ, Mr. Donahue. I keep using him because he's one of the most prominent TV people. Right? But the main thing you do is try to stay off of a radio program or TV program or even a neighborhood stage program, you might say, where you spend your time shouting back and forth at other black people. Nothing is getting done there. And when it's done on television, a lot of black people just get up from the TV set and go in the kitchen somewhere. Once that shouting starts. Yeah, they get disgusted. They say, oh, here we go. They started off okay, but now they're doing a job on each other and I don't even want to hear it. So just don't do it. And you cut it off. The cutoff point is that person has victims guaranteed qualification. You spell it out what it means. Meaning the person can say anything about race that they want to, and I can say anything about it that I want to. You are guaranteed that. You earn that as a victim. Simply by being a victim. Now, if a white person says something, that's something else.
Indeed. Context of white supremacy. So at minimum, we'll be here Thursday, early, 4 p.m. or 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific, just 1 hour earlier than the normal broadcast time for this Thursday, and then back to normal time for Friday. Catherine Massey Book Club. Double check. I'll have posted if we have a program during the interim Tuesday, Wednesday, but it might even be that Gusty gets to take a day off. I think we broadcasted every day since Thursday or so. It's been a while. We've been on a lot of days for February. Hopefully constructive. Anywho, in our slew of days, one pattern that you can note, I said we've been ticking off places on the globe during our broadcasting. So we got Norway in there. We got Spain in there. We got Canada in there. We got Australia in there. One pattern with all of our international guests, with the exception of Canada, non-white people, white people in tragic arrangements. I guess that aspect of Neely Fuller Jr.'s code book has not traveled as widely or been implemented, but that has been one pattern. Any hoodles, global system of white supremacy, and more of that to come. I do think that is very important to constantly keep in mind that this is a global problem, really that is the force driving politics and everything that is happening on the planet. It is the system of white supremacy racism. Everybody is responding either in the maintenance, refinement, further support of white supremacy racism, or reacting, responding to it in our pitiful effort to counter, and or just reacting to it, being victimized by it. But that is the dominant force in the known universe, and I think non-white people, we would be better served, would probably be more informed and have a better, more accurate grasp of what it means to be white, what racism is, if our concept of racism was more global, really universal in scope, as opposed to just being focused on our little geographic location. Any hoodles, I think I did find, it's a little difficult to verify while I'm still on air, but I think I did find Bad Hair, which is kind of wild. I guess Chris Rock, because this film came out in 2013, so Chris Rock, the American legend, his Good Hair had already come out in 2009. So then down in South America, they did Bad Hair in 2013. Chris Rock did a documentary, Bad Hair 2013. This apparently is like a fictional story. And I'll even read the synopsis, just add on what we heard from Dr. Thairi. Junior is a 9-year-old with bad hair. He wants to have it straightened for his yearbook picture like a fashionable pop singer. This puts him at odds with his mother, Marta. The more Junior tries to look sharp and make his mother love him, the more she rejects him until he is cornered face to face with an unexpected decision. And none of these people look like they would be classified as black. Now, this may count as Afro-descended. I don't know. This may even count as dark-skinned, because that's, kind of a subjective thing. So, I don't know. But they definitely don't. They look like they'd be about President Obama's complexion, I would say. All the actors that you can see who look like they're in this film. But I'll see if I can maybe watch this one, learn a little bit, brush up on my Espanol, as they say, and then Pedro Negro, I think this novella, I think that they may have adapted to a television program about the plight of being privileged black male in Venezuela. Any hoodles, super thankful for Dr. Thairi hanging out, discussing her report, as well as the system of white supremacy in Venezuela. Even the risk, she said that she would not, she's in Spain, other side of the world. She said it would not be possible to do that work there, that it's super risky. She said she's been gone for 9 years, even reinforces something I've said for many years. It is dangerous just to speak about white supremacy, racism. Many non-white people have been killed, not for picking up a gun, not for saying, let's go and kill whitey. Matter of fact, she said consistently, let's be nonviolent. I'm about nonviolence. Let's be non. She said that consistently, as have many other non-white people who have been, hey, I'm all about nonviolence, peace. Doesn't matter if you are not white. We are not supposed to talk about white supremacy, racism. You can be killed even for speaking non-violently about racism. That's all you got to do. Peace, brother. Peace. That's why I say, at minimum, let's be accurate with what other non-white people say, even if you don't agree with them and their views on racism or counter-racism. You don't have to. Even still, because a whole lot of non-white people did not agree with Dr. King. That didn't offer him no protection at all. Quote non-white people, victims of white supremacy, accurately. Let's see. Quickly, I do think that is significant. That one, the anecdote that she gave, I thought that was wow, because that's not in the report about where her white husband and a third non-white male, they get stopped by an enforcement officer who is also not white, but apparently not too dark. And he wants to know, has this no-count Negro scoundrel, has he kidnapped you all? What? Hey, man, woo, man. Our conditioning has been conditioned worldwide. I even thought that was fascinating. the way she was explaining, like, how do you end up with a system of white supremacy in a place like Venezuela where you don't have very many people who are classified as white. And she talked about the white powerful group that did not do all of the having sexual intercourse, or at least they don't allow too many of the white females to have sexual activity. The white males, they can go and rape whomever they want to, but just be merry and make sure you have a few white children in there along the way. They became the most powerful, accumulating resources, land, and all that. Heard that before. And then they can pillage and plunder and do the extrajudicial killings on all the other folks. Keep you in the barrios. That's the ghetto in Venezuela. Call it the favelas in Brazil. That's the other South American place. But yeah, I did think that was important in the context of this region and doing this work that is so dangerous, just to talk about racism, where she had to relocate to the other side of the world, that she's in a tragic arrangement. We heard that from Dr. Paul Thomas, who is in Norway, moves from Somalia to Norway, ends in a tragic arrangement. Very common, and some of that just are not understanding white supremacy racism. And then obviously, hey, get up that ladder, can produce offspring that will be lighter, and this is a white person who might have resources, power, or at least they're white. That alone is a resource. But that pattern there as well. We will have to kind of stay tuned. It would be difficult for me to imagine if black people were in a tough spot before President Trump's invasion. It would be hard to imagine how all of this tumult would improve things. It would seem, I don't know, it would seem that can't make anything better. Like, they're smacking us upside, calling us malandros. Sound like they're calling us all this and making up reasons to come and kill us and all the rest of it. Like, okay, Trump comes and says, hey, the real malandro is this Maduro. Get on out of here. Okay. Are they, and this is an unjust and illegal act anyway. Kidnapping, we heard from Mumia. Why would that make things better for black people? See what I'm saying? Now, she said, I don't know. We have to see, we have to see how it all shakes out when it's done. But that would just be my guess. Hey, I'm no Nostradamus either. Can't even spell it. Can't spell Venezuela either. So I don't know. But just my guess would be, if it was bad for the black people before, and ain't nobody in here on this narco-terrorism raid, ain't nobody said, hey, y'all gonna leave Leroy alone. I'm coming to look out for my black sisters and my black brothers in the barrios. I'm coming to look out for them. Y'all going, Maduro, he won't looking out for y'all. We got it. New day coming in Venezuela. I ain't heard nothing like that. Like, not even close. I would tell them don't hold their breath. If it was me, my black, any of them, if they get to hear this, she shares the program, what have you, and they get the translation, any of my black brothers and black sisters feel like you are victims of extrajudicial violence or other forms of racism, do not think no armistice is here with Trump. They don't even do right by niggers that we got sovereignty over right here in the U.S. So probably get worse. Let's see. We will at minimum be here on Thursday, 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific, and then Friday back to normal time for the Catherine Massey Book Club, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. And then you can double check social media to see if we'll be on. In the interim, in between, maybe Gus T can even just get a nap and rest. That said, hopefully folks have got some constructive info. All of the broadcasting we've done the last month really, month of Fort Negro History Month. Hit the blog, invest if you think the cows is constructive racism-notes.blogspot.com, racism-notes.blogspot.com. PayPal button in the top right corner. Beneath the button, you'll see the links for Cash App, Venmo, and PayPal. Enormous gratitude to all of the investors who kept us on the air 17 years. Hopefully we've been worthy of your time and energy. You'll also see the link for our Amazon wish list listed under Gus T. Renegade. Much obliged to all of the investors who've nabbed an item or dozen over our 17 years on the air. Again, hopefully we have been worthy of your time and energy. If you have a line, thought, observation, drop an email untiljustice@gmail.com. We'll be back at minimum on Thursday. Creator, sobriety would be best under conditions of white supremacy, regardless of which America you are in. We need all of our brain cells, especially all of our brain computer, especially if we are going to be victims of extrajudicial violence, lynchings, nigger knockers. We need all of our brain computer working at the highest possible capacity. Hey, they might pull you over and accuse you of kidnapping white people. Sobriety would be best. Creator, we ask that you remind us, stop saying, not all white people are racist. We ask that you remind us, stop name-calling people classified as black. Stop producing throwaway offspring to be classified as non-white and starved, drowned, killed by white women. Mary Kay, Susan Smith, the likes. It has been time. Replace white supremacy with justice immediately. Cows signing out. Thanks all for tuning in.
Nigga, you so brainwashed.
I'm a victim, brother.
No problem. You're a victim.
Yeah. I'm a victim of 400 years of conditioning.
Shut up.
The man has programmed my conditioning. Even my conditioning has been conditioned.